I think we should do a proper introduction here.
Introduction, Brandon.
We're back with an episode of High Stakes Deals, and today we're very excited to have the man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Garland, joining us. Ryan's a fund manager, real estate developer, investor, founder and chairman of Pradyme companies that do a lot of different things. And we're going to break some of it down today, so really excited to be here.
Excited. Yeah, how are you doing, Ryan?
Dude, I'm honored. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm always doing good, especially when I get on podcasts like this.
Nice.
Great. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate it. And we're happy we could get you out of the cold a little bit. I know you were just talking about, so you're in Tennessee, huh?
Yeah, it's 35 degrees out right now. It was 17 this morning. Wow. But I don't look like it because I'm getting a chance to wear this nice pullover.
Yeah.
Nice pen, but it's nice and warm in the house at the moment. But yeah, it is cold. It snowed for 2 days straight. We kind of got snowed in. My youngest didn't get a chance to go to school, so of course he's excited. He gets to stay home. But yeah, it's definitely a different atmosphere out here. It's cold.
I was going to say, so that was a big adjustment, right? Because, I mean, from when we first met, I mean, you were out here in the Temecula, SoCal area forever. Obviously, you do a lot in Havasu and different places. But Tennessee's it's a fairly new thing, right? A couple of years you've been there?
Well, I've been so we moved our headquarters to Tennessee in 21. So we moved out of California just for political environment, along with just kind of I wanted to open up shop in a high dense area with a lot of migration because I was looking to scale the company. So ultimately being in a big city was really smart. Nashville was kind of, for me on the private equity side, made sense. So it was like, hey, might as well pull that trigger now and make it happen. And then I ended up buying a place in East Tennessee next to my mother. And so now I'm out here, and to be honest with you, it is definitely a little bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
You know, when it gets really cold, it gets cold. I'm not used to. I'm like Southern California boy.
Yeah.
And then, but when it gets like during the summer, about 2.5 months or so, it's pretty humid too.
Wow.
So you kind of have to get used to it, which you do. But to be honest with you, man, I love it out here. I think it's just very family. I love the people. It's very family oriented. Again, a lot of peace, which is really important when you have a lot of moving pieces to your company.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm at home. So to be honest with you, it feels like it was a good move for us.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I mean, you seem like you're glowing, Ryan, so it definitely seems like the right move.
Hey, that's just the lighting, okay?
Yeah, right.
No gray hair, I promise.
Well, kudos to the lighter.
By the way, I think In-N-Out just announced they're moving to Tennessee, didn't they? I think they're building a new corporate.
Up one in Nashville.
Yeah. There you go. You're going places when you're in the
and I think they are moving their whole corporate location from California to somewhere. I forget the city. I read it earlier, but now it's pretty interesting. I've heard of so many people going. I mean, it seems like over the last couple of years, particularly in real estate and development and investment, but also just companies moving, it seems like we've seen a lot of movement to, Austin, Atlanta, obviously the Carolinas, but Tennessee's been another huge one that I've heard tons of people talking about going to.
Yeah.
What I kind of enjoyed, to be honest with you, I was really worried about it being a little slow pace, which in some cases it is. The good old boy club, it still does exist. But there's so many people moving from like the high density, high fast pace areas of California into these bigger cities. So in many ways, you're not losing the momentum from a business component, These guys are still hustling, they're waking up, they're moving, and I really enjoy that. But there's a piece to it that I really appreciate is when people make those type of commitments and move, they're kind of trying to start over. They're trying a little harder to establish good relationships, knowing they get the opportunity to start over, and relationships depending on their business is kind of everything. So I can say that, there's been a big culture shift within my business, my company, by just moving places where all the other people are also in the same boat.
Interesting.
Wow.
That's really good. Right. Well, I want to ask. If I let Brandon ask, I'll never get my questions in. Right.
Don't be a wilting flower over there. Come on.
Brandon can talk a lot.
Yeah.
But hey, Ryan. No, but one of the questions I have for you is because you seem like you're very well put together, like in all aspects. You seem very at peace and stuff. But how do you keep all the plates in the air without plates falling down? You've got multiple things going on, and I think it would be good advice to hear from somebody like yourself.
So just remember that no matter what, plates always fall. You kind of get to a point where you just realize you wake up every day and you're just putting fires out. That's kind of the name of the business, I will tell you that, there's a lot of, PR out there and a lot of publications out there that talk about culture within companies. I will tell you that I've been blessed enough to finally earn, and I'll tell you the whole backstory behind it if you're interested, but to finally earn a handful of warriors that are in the back office of my company that I can honestly trust, that show up day in and day out to help me manage the very and most important parts of the company. So, I may be the visionary and I have a lot of the experience, but once I put that experience to the table and advise people that work for me to stay in that lane, they do.
Right.
And they deliver every time. And so I always tell everybody this is a team effort. This really is. So I would say, for us to continue to grow, it takes the right people in the right slots. And it took a long time. I mean, 20 years I've been in the business. I've kissed a lot of frogs kind of thing. And over time, you get that intuition of someone's personality, their discipline. Do they want it enough? Do they want something they can be a part of, but are they humbled enough not to have to be, all eyes on me?
Right.
So when you get the right people that realize, hey, being the face of the company, even though it looks great and you get all the likes on social media, it's not really where the value is. The value is, kind of being able to go home to your family, have, a future where you have an equity uptick, because I give equity in my company away to my staff, my team.
Oh, wow.
Of course, they have to earn it. They have to be there for a certain period of time. But ultimately what that means is that we're all waking up as warriors every day. We get up, we fight, we're in this together no matter what, right?
Nice.
And that's what I've been able to create. And without that, we kind of hit ceilings and it was very difficult to get through those.
Interesting.
Once that culture shifted and you really align with the right people, has been the changing component.
So Ryan, how do you walk that fine line, right? You're the visionary, you're the chairman, you're the guy out there on social media, podcasts, obviously high level meetings, looking at deals, meeting with the big investors. But how do you walk that fine line of being able to delegate and trust your team, but also not be totally out of the loop, right? You still got the details matter. You got to pay attention. You don't want to be micromanaging people, and you don't have the time to do that, I imagine. But at the same time, for the success of the company to happen, there's a certain quality control that has to happen. There's a certain amount of oversight and level of detail that obviously you've got to be in. So how do you walk that line without driving yourself crazy every week?
So I will say that everybody that I hired, there is this one component that I have to be honest and start realizing that not everybody can really do it. And it's I don't think everybody has that trait. I think there's kind of a 1 in 100 kind of type of people out there. And I'm not trying to toot my horn because in reality, it can become very problematic. But to be able to keep a lot of balls in the air is really important. But also really staying very core focused on your mission. I will say that the majority of the people that work for me, they do wear a lot of hats, but it's within the same realm that they're good at. They like being in that position. They feel good about that position. They're good at it. They worked in it prior to working with the company. And I just know what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are, but I also know what their overall long-term goal is. So I never overstep. I never overwork, but I continue to open up doors of opportunity. Hey, do you want me? I'm about to bring on some help for you. Do you want to take it on and get a pay increase, or do you want help? One or the other.
Great question.
And
by the way,
most people go, I'll take the help. And the support for their entire family, like their spouses or their kids or even the grandparents sometimes step up and go, hey, take the income, work a little extra hours, right? Now I have people that are making good income that are just the biggest fans of the company. But there's another component to it that because of the amount of risk and responsibility we have, I do have a lot of third-party attorneys. Like, for example, I spend more money in legal fees than I do salaries every year.
Right.
So I have probably some of the largest law firms, from tax strategy to, third-party SEC audits, to CPA services, contract negotiation. I bring in, bigger players and attorneys that are dealing with much larger operations than we are. And so again, it's that whole concept of like, if you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
Go put yourself in rooms with people smarter than you. I think that's the thing that I've realized, but you have to pay to get into those rooms. So I am spending, $800 to $1,000 an hour for an attorney, but instead of $250 or $300 an hour for a different attorney trying to cut costs. But I will tell you, if litigation does come down the road, to have the attorney that you paid $1,000 an hour and spent a little bit more money was worth
Right.
every
Right.
single
Invaluable.
penny.
Worth every penny.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
freaking penny. And so you know, I didn't learn all this until I go through it. I got kicked in the teeth a lot. And then I got to a point where I'm like, okay, what I'll do is I'll lean down, I'll wear more hats, get the company to a certain position, and then I'll allocate more resources to legal fees.
There it
And
is.
so every project that I take on, I actually take a lot of my management fees and put it into legal fees.
And again, this is because you're raising tons of private capital. You've got so many moving parts. You need audited financials, I assume. So you need to make sure everything is just where it needs to be. You can't, right.
You know, because at the same time, it's really about where do you want to go, right? You have, I say it completely and respectfully, you have smaller retail investors, people that are a little less sophisticated. They see the glitz and the glam and they're like, oh, I love those returns, I want to invest. And then you have the people that are very successful, very, very sophisticated. They have attorneys that are also reviewing our documents before they write big checks. And what you really want to do is try to prepare for all of it, right? Because we don't want to pass on an opportunity and we really care about building relationships. And what I will tell you is I've had some of the smallest investors in the beginning of my career and maybe on some of my projects early on that are now some of my largest investors, you know, where they've you know, had a death in the family, right? Or had some trust that came in and now they put 5-6 million with me, up to 18 million or some of that nature, you know? So they're really just looking at from a relationship side is really important. So I really got to a point where I'm like, you know what? Everybody's in the same boat with the same row. I'm just going to prepare for the best and the worst. I'm also going to try to build the infrastructure early on to scale the business to where I really want to take it. So spend the money and use the resources now to build that infrastructure to ultimately not hinder us if we have, you know, a growth opportunity. Now we have to start over or recalibrate or whatever. It's like, no, we have the infrastructure. We can take it right now.
Nice.
Wow. So Ryan, I know when we spoke before, you mentioned that you've done. By the way, I'm gonna throw some stats out there. I think they're very impressive. Correct me if I'm wrong with my stats here. $3.5 billion of transactions, over $300 million in debt and equity that you've raised. I think $120-ish million of that is pure equity.
Yep.
So when you're raising all this capital and doing these types of deals, are you dealing with more retail investors that are putting in $200,000, $500,000 at a pop? Or are you now, as you've grown, dealing with more of these institutional family office, these bigger players that say, hey, I can write the $10 million check or the $50 million check? How has that changed over time? And kind of what's your preference as far as how you're raising capital?
So I'm probably going to get my hand slapped to be a little honest, but it's important because anybody who goes down this road, you can't, I would say that I didn't think of it in the beginning, but I feel like it was the right decision moving forward. So because I've always had an impressive track record, but not from the development side, right? So for me to raise capital, the hardest deal to raise money for is your first deal, always.
Right.
You don't have the track record. You need people that trust you. You got to have friends. And that's why they say go raise money with friends and family first. You know, it's the people that know who you are and they're going to invest into you, not necessarily track record. As time goes on, then people will start investing into the track record and you, because everybody always invests into the operator. There's millions of type of opportunities out there people can invest into, but they always invest in the operator, right?
True.
The psychology behind it. But what happened was I really started raising money with smaller retail investors, $50,000 at a time, $100,000 at a time, and we still do that. And then we got into, where we had a big enough track record to start approaching family office. And what we started realizing was family office typically wants to have a big stick at the table. And to be candid, a lot of these guys kind of set you up for failure. When you look at how these guys operate, that's why so many people don't like Wall Street anymore. They're just, they're kind of crooks in some cases. So some of these wealth managers will sit down with you and go, cool, you got a great opportunity. We'll put up the 20 million that you need. But it's like all of these details in the contract where, they'll just legally beat you to death because they have more money.
Right.
But if you mess up or you go over budget or you go over a timeline or you go over they're done. You have to forfeit the whole project. And therefore your reputation, everything's shot and you're locked, right?
Wow.
So, and a lot of times they require you to come in with a significant amount of money, which a lot of developers, not only their own money, but they'll go raise money to come in with the required amount. They'll come up with a GP slug, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So now you go and raise GP and all that GP's at risk. So now you have all your friends, your relationships after 10, 15, 20 years to build relationships to come in with the 5 million that they want you to come in with when they're going to come in with the other 20. but that's going to be at risk first. And then they have the biggest stick at the table. And what's happened is I've dealt with enough in Beverly Hills and Bel Air and all of these groups, because you guys know I built a lot of, funded and built a lot of homes in Beverly Hills and Bel Air area, in those surrounding areas. What you realize is a lot of these people, they're not what you hoped they would be, just as individuals. The integrity isn't there. We got to a point that every time we were building a $20 million house or a $30 million house, the neighbor's suing you for something. And you're settling out constantly. A truck is parked by their driveway and they don't like it, they sue you. It's just crazy. So you kind of get to a point where you're like, look, the world isn't what you think it wish it was. But don't be naive. The people that come in with $20 million, they're going to protect it at all costs.
Right.
And then they're going to bring other people in that have a track record, and they're going to watch what you do. And if they have to take it back, they're going to take it back seamlessly, and not even you're out. And a lot of people do that to try to take your ideas. So I got to a point where we had enough of those. Again, this is where those attorneys come into play. So I hire attorneys that deal with big players like this.
And they're coming
to me going, hey, I already can see where this is going. And I would probably just go the hard way, raise the money, through smaller investors, just take the licks, spend the money and take more time building your brand. That's going to be worth it down the road than this easy money that's right in front, because it's actually not easy. It's going to set you back.
Yeah.
Well,
and honestly, it was the smartest thing to do, because every single project I've ever had, including every project I fund that has a significant amount of zeros behind it, has problems, and there has delays, and there are cost overruns, and so the family offices know that. So what's happened over time, to answer your question more directly now, is we've gotten to a point where we've built enough of a track record, even with smaller investors, that when a family office comes to us, we're saying, listen, we appreciate you wanting to write a big check and you've seen the value in us, but we have the bigger stick, and you're just going to get in the same boat in the same row with everybody else.
Right.
And that's just the way this is going to go.
So you'll still take the big money, but you're not doing all this special
on
treatment
your terms. On your terms.
There's no special behind the door kind of conversations happening. No, it isn't.
And what do they say to that, Ryan? Did they say bye-bye, or
some people? So you're seeing a big shift in that right now. What's happening? So kind of going back to and this is just overall, but let's just say Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett moved to a $298 billion cash position.
Right.
Everyone's pulling money out of stocks and bonds, and they're just nervous, right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But when you see big players starting to go into cash positions, what they're waiting for is opportunity. Mm-hmm. They can put that money sitting into a brokerage account at J.P. Morgan, making 5-6%, where they're not making that in any other stocks right now. It's just kind of stagnant, certain things.
Yeah.
So what's happening is these guys are all going to cash positions. Same thing with family office. The families, the people that actually have the money, are watching these wealth managers make bad decisions. They're not keeping up with the Joneses. They're not. So I use this as an example all the time. If you were to look at this whole election stuff that had happened, Q4 last year, and then you look at what's happening with Trump's administration every single day, these guys are moving mountains every day. I mean, they are flying. It's crazy to see how much they do every day.
Right.
And they're accomplishing. If you're not moving that fast, you're making mistakes. You're going to fall behind. So what I mean by all that is, we're at a point where we're watching the market strong, and some of these family office, the families, the ones that it's their money, are starting to make better decisions, because their wealth managers are not making those decisions. All those wealth managers care about are their management fees and AUM, how many assets they have under management, so they can keep their salaries. They're not making good investments. So these families are like, hey, look, we got inflation, we're losing employees, we have this, like, we need you to start making better decisions with our money, because we're losing over here. And so now those families are coming to groups like us, because ultimately, just timing in the market, alternative investments and real estate is really kind of the hub, right? It always has been the hedge against inflation anyways. Yeah. So you're starting to see family offices come to groups like us going, hey, we're willing to allocate some capital to you, but we're also interviewing other operators, and we want to diversify, not put all of our eggs in one basket. So we're starting to get more larger check writers, which, ironically, we're getting more allocations of 500, a million, 4 million, a lot of 4 millions for whatever reason. Talked to a guy today, he's trying to liquidate out of Charles Schwab. He has about 5 million, that type of stuff. And he's looking for, a couple different vehicles, but all basically in real estate.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's, just to jump in, I guess that's kind of like, even for us as a smaller syndication group, right? That's the question we've continued to ask ourselves. before the podcast, Greg and I are talking, and like we've done three syndications in the last 24 months, right? We have 103 doors right now, about $25 million AUM as far as the properties. And between our three syndications, we've probably raised $5-6 million, something like that. And so, and by the way, primarily friends and family, and one of them was a 506c. But we're kind of at that point, right, where we're going, okay, how do we go from 100 doors to 1,000 doors?
Exactly.
And to, let's just say as the next semi-arbitrary, but the next benchmark, right? And to do that, we know it's going to take a lot of capital. And we're asking ourselves the same question, which you're, like basically what you just flayed out of. Do we go sign our life away to these bigger groups that can probably write these big checks, but then put us in sort of a disadvantage as far as now operating our own deal where somebody can kind of come in and turn the lights off on you? Or do you slug it out and keep continuing to bring in the smaller investors, or some combination? But then, I guess the question goes back to whether it's us or somebody else, how do you get more smaller investors? I mean, if you're someone like Grant Cardone or even like you, I use Cardone as an example because he goes from a 50-year-old guy that nobody knows to blows up on social media and raises $1 billion or something over social media, just something stupid, right?
Crazy.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, he took
10X.
over.
Yeah.
And so, he can throw a stick and say, I'm buying this new deal, and all these investors show up with whatever amount of money. He's also done the Reg A, I think, and these other things where he can take smaller investments. But the point is, for someone like us that's like, okay, we have a little bit of a network, a little bit of a social media presence. We got this podcast. We are raising money and getting new contacts, and it's continually happening. But if we want to, for example, go to our next deal, like we just closed an $8 million deal. If we want to go to our next deal and close a $20 million deal, let's say later this year, it's going to take a much bigger chunk of capital to do, and our existing network probably doesn't have it. And so I guess what would your advice be with that? It was a long question. What would your advice be to someone like us to sort of fast track that, and where should we be putting our heads as far as the capital side?
Right. I think Ryan would maybe say this, but I know he'll answer it. But doesn't success beget success? Like, things start building on themselves, and if we're going to go with just the private investors, which makes a lot of sense, what you were saying, Ryan, is that they just start coming towards you because success just builds on itself. But what do you think, Ryan?
Well, yeah, you nailed it. But yeah, the problem is you got to build awareness. Right? They don't know about you.
They're not just going to show up because we put a $20 million deal under contract and think happy thoughts, right? Like we have to write some big checks, and so that's like, how do we start positioning ourselves for that?
You're like, hey guys, got a $20 million contract. We're like, okay, now it's time to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much, Ryan.
Yeah.
And then you. So this is actually, I really appreciate this conversation because this is where the management of a private equity fund really comes in. So you have a time issue, right? So now you got to launch a 506c, which is accredited fund for accredited investors. Now you got to go through the accreditation process. If you're screening people, you got to start building awareness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Create all of your marketing material, get it out to your CRM, have people build the marketing material, rely on them to move fast.
Yeah.
Build your website, get your landing pages up, get your pitch deck, get your pro formas.
Wow.
And by the way, try to do that in an escrow where you got to do some due diligence first to even have some stuff to pitch the investors. And you got brokers that are going, you said you could close this in 60 or 90 days, and you're trying to make it all work because you're bubble gumming it.
So what we do, which is we're in a different position now, but I'll tell you kind of what I did when I was kind of where you guys were is the very first thing I did is I went and struck deals where the seller would carry a little bit or give me a very long escrow. Okay. Some sort of seller that's really not in a rush, wasn't on the market. I go to them and say, hey, look, why don't we work a deal? I'll give you the basis that you want for the land, but I'll allow that to accumulate at 8%. So if I close it in February, great, you got 8% based off of that because we do an extended escrow. Let's say, pick a number, let's do 120 days.
Right.
If it goes to, 190 days or 200 days, they've accumulated 8% that entire time until I close.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So now they're closing with an increased basis.
Right.
You see where I'm going?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it buys you time.
Yeah.
Because 90% of your syndication always comes in at the last moment.
Literally.
Single time, right? Because you're hustling, you're grinding.
Right.
So that's just the way it always comes. So you want to, that's one thing is strike deals where you can get longer escrows and not have to feel that much pressure.
Okay.
But you want to act as if kind of thing, right? As if you got to close tomorrow, you know, and everybody has to be on the same page. So whether who's building your creatives, pitch decks, pro formas, you got to make sure you set that tone early. Like, hey, we got to move now. Because without that marketing material, you're not going to do well. The other thing that I've realized is that you want your marketing material to be all the way set, you know.
Before it goes out, you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. Don't do half-ass your material and then send it out. I think we've made those mistakes because we wanted to try to raise money right away, and people question the shit out of it, and we're like, yeah, you're right. Maybe we'll
you're right.
You're like, hold that thought.
And a lot of times, the people that come. So what happens is, and what we're realizing is, it takes about 90 days to create momentum. So as we start marketing the project, all the conversations, hey, do you have an IRA, whatever the case would be, it takes about 60, 90 days to really start seeing the money come in and being consistent. But when but you want to be able to lay the impact early on. The problem is that if that clock will always start when you start marketing, right? So if you're starting to get crap material out, I'm not saying you guys do, I'm just using it as an example.
We made that, by the way, we made that mistake in the past too. Yeah.
The delay, you're going to start the 90 days, but you're going to like recalibrate those people when you get better product out there. And then they're going to scrutinize your stuff and go, And the problem with that is this. It's when now that they're in your network, you want to be able to go to them for the next deal if they didn't invest into this one. So what you want is to always, it's like that, like judge a book by its cover. If you have your stuff completely dialed from the beginning and you go to somebody and let's say they pass, but your marketing material was great, they see your success, it doesn't mean that they're going to pass on the next one. And the likelihood of moving forward on the next one goes up because now they see your success.
Yeah.
That's a great
point.
So
you really want to be able to deliver that impact because every person you come in contact with could possibly be a potential client. And I have people that come out of the woodworks I never would have thought become clients. You guys have probably experienced that too. So at the end of the day, that's one. That's another component down to launching your fund. And every attorney says, I can get this done in 2 weeks. Send me your retainer. And that's all bullshit too. You know? And you're like, it's like, you just want to kill yourself. So you want to get to a point where you have kind of like a templated 506C with a very strong business plan that you just pump it in there. And then you just write the right disclosures that like, you know, the pro forma, the numbers can change. We'll always provide you material updates. So you're staying on the SEC regulation and compliance.
But that way it kind of speeds up the front end.
But just be honest, you know?
Yeah.
And when you're just honest with clients, they really appreciate it. So while you're continuing your due diligence, while you're trying to raise capital, because that's kind of how it works, you're value engineering your budget, whatever the case would be, screening contractors, communicating with the city. You know how it goes. It's just like 100 miles an hour the whole time and raise money at the same time. It's very 100%. Different. You want to try to get that checklist out of the way first, but remember that without the money, nothing else matters. You can be going to coffee, lunch, and going to lunch and traveling to the city and paying fees and all that. You're just throwing money at it. So always create your marketing material, number one. Even if it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 days longer, it doesn't matter, because if you get the right material in front of the right people, what you'll realize in this market, and this is kind of like some of the things we're seeing, is people are moving money fast, like faster than ever before. So you may get in front of the right guy and he's like, I got to go right now. Like one of my ladies, she's not very seasoned, gets on a call this morning. This guy's like, I've been seeing your guys' emails. I've watched you for a while. I need to put 50,000 right now. Put it apart. Like, what do you have? And she's like, well, we got 2 offers for you. And he's like, well, whatever, just 50 grand in one of them.
Pick one. Yeah. Wow. That's great.
Like, wow. Oh, okay, well,
nice that it works out that way.
That's awesome. Right.
So I call her. She called me to tell me the story, and I said, put him on the phone with me. I need the guy to know what he's getting himself into, at least. Jesus, So, but you're going to get those, and really why? It's because we've been farming for so long that I think we created the trust and the track record. So it does get easier.
It does.
Raising capital. But dude, it's like, it sucks so bad to say it this way, but it's so worth the hustle in the beginning to raise the money, close one deal at a time. Because then you can control your destiny. Because I've had guys come to me and go, I'll write you a check. And I'm like, no. And I've had people on my team like, take it, Ryan, because raising capital is a nightmare. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. Right. And what's happened is a lot of them will come back to me where we're getting close and we're starting to pump out. Hey, we're about to close out. If you want to get in, let us know. Right. And they'll come back to us and go, hey, Ryan, okay, we just want to put $1 million with you. What do you need to close out?
There we go.
With no stick at the table.
Wow.
No, I think it's smart, man. And I think it's because it is such a fine line between that wanting to grow and get more, assets under management, more projects going, and making the wrong deal, because we all read the stories of the people that get the lights shut off when by their equity partners or their bank or whatever, right? And so I think that's I mean, you're validating basically where my head was, because we've been having these conversations internally, like where do we go? But but it's also it's a grind though, right? Because when you're building a podcast, building your social media, when you've only done a few syndications, you're really kind of getting going. And we have good networks, and we've been in real estate for 20 years, but as investors, really just hardcore the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? And so it's building that up. And sometimes it feels like you're in quicksand a little bit. You're like, man, I'll go to this Rod Khleif conference, and I'm sitting next to some 20-year-old dude that has like 1,500 doors or something, and I'm like, what the hell, but there's always people bigger and smaller.
There's
but
always some story back there. His dad gave him the money.
That's true. Exactly right, Ryan. Yeah. His grandma died and left him. New York.
Man.
He's mismanaging it. It's in foreclosure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you must have the same thing, right? Like for me, I always say, because people are like, oh, you have 100 doors, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm proud of what we've done already, but I'm not satisfied with that in the least bit, right? Because I know what our potential is, and so I'm sure you have it just on a different level. But you're probably looking at guys that are like, man, okay, we can do what can we do here?
Sure. I'm not happy either.
You're not happy either. Yeah.
So there's that component where you always you look in the mirror and you're like, man, I want to be in a different place, but there's our people back there that would do anything to be in your shoes. And there's a lot of truth to that, and so I'm always humbled from that kind of thought process. But I will say this about you, and this is one of the reasons I want to be on here and support you, is I think the thing that you have that most don't have is this tenacity and the discipline to keep going.
Yeah,
appreciate that, man.
And
thank you.
I'll tell you right now, all of I turned 40 last year, right? And everyone's like, man, how do you feel turning 40? And I'm like,
looking good, man. Looking good, by the way.
Yeah. But at the same time, with all, I've had a lot of shots fired. I've had a lot of people do me wrong, but I'm at this point where I'm like, I don't look in the rearview mirror. And I remember telling my team, I'm like, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With my knowledge now and my resources and my team, I could see the light, kind of thing. It almost brings tears to my eyes, because it's like, I would never turn back the hands in time on the hardships I had to go through to get to where we are. The relationship, I'll tell you what, this is what's even crazier. This is the most important component, I think, to the success of this company. And I haven't been able to mention this on any podcast. The people that invest into me, you guys know this, every one of your investors have a story. They've all been through hardships like we all have. And they've lost loved ones, they've lost kids, they've had cancer, they fought illnesses, I mean, the list goes on. People have real hardship in their life, and most of our investors are boomers, so they've been kicked in the teeth a lot, And the one thing I'll tell you is that the sophistication of people, when you get to know who they are, and let's say some of them come from construction backgrounds or what have you, machinery or whatever, right? And what I've realized is that when I'm so transparent with my clients, if I'm having a hardship or I'm having a problem with this, the amount of people that pull together to get this business, keep it running, I don't feel alone anymore. Where people wake up and they're like, man, you got 300 clients, almost 400 clients now. That's a lot of weight. And I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of not. I feel like I have a military back there rooting for us to work, and I've had to do capital calls.
What a feeling! Yeah,
and I've had investors say, Ryan, I'll write you a check for $500,000 right now, or $1 million bucks got you. And I'm like, what? And all that stress went away in seconds.
That's amazing.
And we performed, and we made more than we expected, and they're happier than can be. And now we have a bond. I almost feel like some of my clients are like family.
Nice.
I mean, they're sending me text messages and calls, and their families, they're referring people my way, and dude, it's like I really have a military behind the success of this company, and that's actually where the value is. So the relationship, for sure. Even if you don't perform, I've had a project where we kind of broke even. It wasn't any money. We got everybody their money back in 4%, and almost every single one of them said, Ryan, I appreciate the honesty, and it wasn't on your fault or your shoulders, but we want to reinvest with you.
Yeah, Ryan,
awesome.
Amazing.
This has all contributed to your persona. I mean, you're a guy you're just a likable guy. I mean, I see a lot of guys on podcasts, and I don't know, but instantly, you have this humanity and this humbleness about yourself. I think that's a real, a tribute to you and that army you said you have behind you, because I think they're really believing in you too.
Well, and
Yeah.
you've got, by the way,
But
you got a hell of a story too, Ryan.
And
I know
a
we're
hell
going
of
to
a
jump into
story.
some of that here, but
Yeah.
you got a hell of a
Yeah.
story, and
Yeah.
some of the adversity you've overcome to get to where you are, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'll sum it up. But yeah, I just think you guys have absolutely the tools and the knowledge and resources and
Thank you,
guys like
man.
me in your back pocket. They're like,
Thank
hey,
you.
how do we sharpen this? How do we do that? And that's what I did. I just called people that, had done things in certain departments that I needed to grow, and they were very more than happy to help me, and
Yeah.
that's key,
Nice.
So you guys have a good network, and you guys are watching it happen, and you've always had your head down and you've been successful. And I would say do it the hard way, man, because it's the
Yeah.
hard way. And I'll tell you what.
No, that's good advice, Ryan. Yeah.
When you do, when you deliver and your clients are happy, and you just kind of look at life differently when you're like, look, you could go into a room and some guys like that, oh, I got 1,000 units, and you're like,
Right.
brother, you haven't taken shots like I have. There's no way, man.
There's no way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
I'm
Right,
calling
'cause,
bullshit. Yeah.
You're like, I can tell you a few stories. Yeah. Oh man.
Well, I have a question. I know we've been kind of talking about the details and all great stuff. Great information, Ryan. But like zooming out for a moment, where do you see the market, Ryan? Like, where are you guys going? Where are you focusing a lot of your stuff?
And let's talk about barn caves, Bob. I know we're going to get there, but yeah,
Bar-
I love that
barn
question.
dominiums.
What's
Barn-
Pradyme doing?
Yeah.
Where do you see the market? Let's talk
Yeah.
about some of the sexy
Yeah.
deals you're working on.
Okay. So we've kind of narrowed down our niche, and obviously we were really diversified and spread out prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
We had office and retail and multifamily and all kinds of stuff. And one thing I have to kind of appreciate during the pandemic is it really narrowed down the assets that perform, right? Single family build to rent, high dense areas, a lot of migration happening. So it was kind of easy to isolate demand. Boat and RV storage was huge, a lot of money being pumped into the market, interest rates were low. The lifestyle trends is kind of the fastest growing part of the world, including healthcare. So that was really easy to identify multi-generational use for like boat and RV storage and so forth. So we really got into storage, self-storage as well, all the same asset class.
Yeah.
And then we have apartments that we're finishing in San Antonio. That's always been good. We're in a high dense area down there by the Pearl. Where you can kind of walk to all the shops, old area, kind of the historical district. So it's a really cool
This is
vibe.
ground up
Nice.
construction. Right?
Ground up, all
yeah.
brand new builds.
Yep.
Everything we do is ground up. And then the boat and RV storage project in Lake Havasu, we're really kind of getting on the map for that. I've got a lot of positive PR. In fact, that's 225,000 square feet, 208 units. And the larger units, which are 28 by 60s, and some of them are 28 by 77s with mezzanines in the back with sliding glass doors, go out, you can have lake view. Total man cave is what it is. But we designed them with like having all the plumbing, air conditioning, insulation, and basically you can customize them any way you want. Bathrooms, showers, washers and dryers, kitchens. I mean, you do whatever you want to do.
Wow.
Nice.
And so you're seeing a lot of people wanting that kind of lifestyle in that space to put all their toys, get it out of their garages at home, that type of stuff, and then have a place to go and have it like maybe a little office.
Yeah.
But you get the real estate and you get the write-off, right? So a lot of people going into that, along with the amount of 1031 exchanges from what happened during the pandemic, where landlords couldn't collect rent, right? Remember that? And so as you're a boomer, they're like, look, I'm making 3, 4, 5% a year after turnover and tenants and cleaning up the project or cleaning up the house when people turn over or what have you, or problems happening with air conditioning units, water heaters, what have you. They're not making the rents that they thought they would, and it's more of a headache than anything else. So people are 1031 exchanging into these units where they're getting the same cash flow but with no headache and no maintenance at all, because it's just a box, a metal box.
And so they can rent them out. So if they buy one of your units, there's nothing preventing them from, hey, I bought this and then I'm going to rent it out to somebody by the weekend or the week or by the month, or however you guys do it, right?
Yep. So think about like all of the real. So if you think about it, you'll kind of smile. Think about all the real estate investment groups out there. These like REI clubs that have like, they say buy rentals, and they're out there finding stuff in Detroit and all these like they're buying stuff for 80,000, 100,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more people out there with that, and what they do is they chase people who have IRAs, right? And so if you look at the entry point for the price points for this with no headache, all of these REI clubs across the country, as long as we build awareness for them, are driving their clients to buy these with no maintenance and no turnover and consistent cash flow. A lot of 1031.
Wow.
It's fee simple. And so that it's been a very fast growing asset because the entry point for acquisition is low. It's not like a regular house. It's not 800,000. You got to qualify for a mortgage. You know, if you got 400,000 in capital gains, you could buy a couple of units in cash flow without having any debt against you and not having to qualify, right? It's been moving quickly. But to parallel that with the same product, the people that are buying the larger units, because those are the smaller, you know, more economical units, you put your boat, you plug it in, you know, that type of stuff, 14 by 50s.
Right.
But the bigger units, people are customizing them. So you have the man caves all within inside the same community.
Right.
And what has happened is that the people that have these man caves are calling me, the owners, and going, "Hey, Ryan, can we stay here for the weekend instead of getting an Airbnb?" Like,
right.
And legally, I have to say no, you know, because it's not zoned for that. It's not a single family. It's an industrial building, you know. So I have to say no. Now, if they do, I don't know about it.
Right.
But don't run your don't run your RVs or start your car in your unit, please. I don't want a dead body.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, and it kind of goes a little too far, but what we did is we're finishing our 3-story product of it's called Pine Street, which is our apartments in San Antonio.
Okay.
We finished a 3-story single family townhome project just outside Denver. And those were condo mapped, but they were townhomes. And so they were
garage on the, it was like garage on the ground level and then 2 up. Okay.
And you sell them off individually. Yeah.
Yep. Right. So it's fee simple. So garage at the bottom. This one, those particular ones had a garage with a bedroom and bathroom downstairs, and then you walk upstairs to all your living spaces, your kitchen, and 2 more bedrooms, what have you.
Right.
And then your 3rd floor had your master suite.
Right.
Nice.
And so it was a hit. So the price point was good. A lot of investors, a lot of Airbnb. So like you just cast your net for buyers all over the place.
All over the place.
From the attainability of it. So with what was going on when the planning of this, and basically this time last year, there was a mandate in Lake Havasu, so literally right next to my Pradyme storage project, the condo, the luxury condos. Right next to that, there was 18 acres from the same landowner that I bought my land for Pradyme storage was selling it, and I decided to buy it. Now I was going to expand Pradyme storage originally because it's just they're flying off the shelves.
Right.
However, there was a mandate that a moratorium where the city won't allow boat and RV storage to be built inside the city limits anymore because it's just so saturated. Right. And to be honest with you, they're kind of a sore thumb if you don't have a really nice product. Some of this stuff's really, really old. So you drive through town, you just have old industrial buildings everywhere.
Everywhere.
So I don't blame the city at all.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, shoot, man, people want to live in these things. We're used to building a 3-story product. I'm like, why don't we do a man cave with residents?
Marry the two together.
Yeah.
Put two together, and we've already doing it, you know?
Wow.
And then what we wanted to do is, because of the labor issues that was going on in Lake Havasu, our subs aren't big enough to deal with like maybe 5 homes being built for, you know, framers.
Right.
They just don't have the labor force for the subs.
By the way, why is that real quick? Is it just because it's a smaller population out there? And so it's just.
Yeah. And it's so far away from like the high dense areas like Las Vegas and Phoenix and so forth. But you know, so for us, it's a little different because our contracts are much bigger because we're the largest commercial developer there in the city. But
how many units?
So we can bring people in. But at the time, with something that's boat and RV, it's just a box. There's only 12 trades, you know, not much. But with the residential side, we were like, you know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't we open up our own construction company? We manage everything in house, all the orders, everything, take on all the liability. We cut costs, timelines, everything. Yeah. So we did that with Pradyme Storage. We did that in the middle of Pradyme Storage and then took it over. And then what happened was so as you guys know, by kind of what cut my teeth in the space was a private money lender, right? Right. And because I had moved my headquarters to Nashville, the Southeast is big in barn dominiums. So I was getting all these loan requests for ground up construction, single family for these houses that were barn dominiums, but they were single family homes. And I was really impressed on how nice these things are. I'm like, I would live in these all day long.
All day long. Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And it's just, dude, it's like the fastest growing trend in single family builds right now. It's just, they're going everywhere. And manufacturing steel buildings that you can bolt together, less maintenance, the cost is down. So looking at the political environment, inflation, rates, I knew that I want to stay in the single family space, but I got to figure out a way to cut our costs to pass that savings over to the end buyer, right? And if I can be a little bit lower, but higher end, more luxury, and create the density on the land that I bought, I could probably have a decent run. And so that's what we did. So we knew no matter what the outcome was, if we just planned for the worst, hope for the best, but plan for the worst, then the likelihood of this being successful will go up. So that's what we did. We ended up, it was already zoned high density residential, so that was easy. We just had to submit for a height restriction, which we're golden.
Wow.
And now we can build a 3-story townhome with big RV garages that are drive-throughs, by the way. So you can go out the back end. So there, you go out one end and come out the back
By the way,
end.
how big do these garages have to be?
Yeah.
Because it's not like back in the day where someone had a 20-foot
like-
boat. I mean, these are
These are like 2,200 square feet. They're 28
Wow.
by 70 feet deep.
70 feet
Wow.
deep garages, and then
Yeah,
they're tall,
they're
right?
cool.
Like you said, they're like 14,
They're
12.
16 feet.
They're
Yep.
16. Okay, you said 16.
16
Okay.
feet tall.
Wow.
So you have a regular 14-foot garage on one side for your RVs and your boats and so forth. And then you have a standard 10-foot garage on the other side. So more economical, everyday use kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I am putting an elevator in there. And
Oh,
you know,
wow.
I'll geek out with you to tell about this elevator. It's all air pressed. It's unbelievable. I mean, the technology nowadays is impressive.
Wow. So
Yeah.
So
wait,
we have-
so people have the option to have an elevator in the unit?
We're delivering
or
every single one with an elevator.
Every one
Really?
of them. Wow.
See, I would have thought that would have been cost prohibitive based
Yeah.
on what you're
Yeah.
doing there, but it's not. Huh?
Well, we because it's such a retirement community.
Yeah.
We knew that we had to think about something. You know, climbing
Yeah.
16 feet, 2 stories basically to
true.
get to your
That's
the living
true.
space, you know?
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
extra more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're like, we got to do something. So we basically designed them all, and you got to remember, the value engineering component is, you know, negotiating a mass purchase for all of those units. You
Of
know,
course.
so it helps a little bit, and when you do it on a much larger scale, then it can be done rather cost effective.
So it's I'm assuming it's a hydraulic elevator, or is it?
it's actually air compressed.
Oh, you said air
Air.
compressed. So it's air
Yeah.
compressed. Wow.
Hydraulic
it's
would
air
be
compressed,
expensive.
and
Yeah.
The air compressor turns on like once a month, and you can set it like during the day if you want. Like it's unbelievable.
Wow.
You can
That's-
barely hear it, you know. Kind of
That's
thing.
far out.
Man, that's really cool.
I
So
love
did you have to
that.
go through one of the big
Think of
suppliers?
like a big tank, and then
Yeah.
like, you know, it just transfers air underneath to push it up, and it transfers air and sucks air out of the bottom to come down.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow. Man,
Yeah, it's a
so
big-
that's
yeah.
pretty cool.
interesting. That's
Yeah.
cool, man.
That's
Wow.
awesome. Hey, Ryan, how many units do you have over there?
Those are going to be 97.
There's gonna be nice. Have you started? Has construction
We
started?
did. We broke ground. Yep,
Wow.
on phase
Yeah.
one.
Congratulations.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's really impressive. But I think what made it even more impressive. So now you basically, what we did is we created a barn dominium pitched roof,
Yep.
which when you walk into the second floor, by the way, it's a 26-foot vaulted ceiling because it's that pitch roof. It's beautiful.
Wow.
And then, you know, you go up to the third floor and you have your master suite, and it's got its own balcony and the whole 9 yards. So it's actually, we have 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom layouts, 2,200 square feet to 3,300 square foot living space. So it's stunning.
Wow.
Plus you have that big garage. You know,
Now, so what is your price range right
Yeah,
now?
what is your
I know
price?
we talked about this offline, but it's a
our exit price is we're doing $393 a foot on average, where all of the other residential in the area, whether they're new or even older builds, like in the last 10 years, are selling for anywhere between $425 and $455 a foot. So we're lower than everybody else in the area,
Wow.
wow.
and there's
That's
still
great.
really good margin, and that's like with a big cushion, by the way.
And how big are you?
we now that we're taking on the GC and manufacturing, and we're bringing in solar for tax credits and all this other stuff, that wasn't in my pro forma. So we're pretty conservative going in.
Nice.
Man, that's amazing. And you know, now that they can get residential financing, you know, so that
Yep.
changes
There you
the
go.
game,
Yep.
right? It's
Yep.
no longer just a storage unit that they're buying, which would be totally different, right? They got to pay cash, so there's not financing available
Oh,
for
there-
it. But in this case, I mean, that's had to have opened up a ton of doors for you guys to get those sales done, huh?
Now this is where the rubber meets the road, and I think you'll appreciate it. So, health and wellness and healthcare is the fastest growing industry, right?
Yep. Yep.
And with everything that's going on in the health and wellness and in the world, and all the bad food and everything else and all the PR that's going on, a lot of physicians are going back to telling their patients, go back to the old school, eat healthy, work out. I
Yep.
mean, it's just a big deal right now.
Yep.
So you're seeing, if you just look at the gym data, it's really blowing up. Well, what we did, because it is Lake Havasu, it's in the desert, man. I mean,
in
it
the
is out
desert.
there.
Yeah.
And it's hot. So during the summer,
Yeah.
there's no way people are going to want to buy a house without a pool. Even though
Yeah.
the lake's right up
Yeah.
the corner, you got to have a pool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was looking at it, one of the things that we took pride on was the cost of the HOAs at Pradyme Storage. What made them so cheap was because the project was so big. We have 208 units,
Right.
you know, so we can divide the overall cost to maintain that development over a lot of units. So therefore, each unit cost is pretty low, and it's the lowest in the city. So we knew that people hate HOAs over. I hate HOAs, dude. Like it's just a
They're a pain in the
problem.
ass. They're
They have a
charging
bad
you,
name,
giving
yes,
you
right.
tickets or stuff.
Dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I own the HOA company, so I'm making all the rules, which will be very lenient for people, but we want
Nice.
stuff to be nice and clean. You know, they represent us and our demand, or our product. But what we did is when we were going through our pro forma with the increased cost of insurance, which by the way, the reason I went with steel buildings was not only to manufacture them in bulk and quickly and erect these quicker, like
but
we
the
do
fire.
regular
Yeah.
storage.
Yep.
We're using certain paneling and all this
Yep.
other stuff, which is nicer than any stick built, but we are stick building interior walls.
Okay.
But we could plop these up a lot faster, but it's for insurance purposes. We had started seeing the insurance problems when I was funding loans for these barn dominiums in the Southeast, 3 years ago. The insurance cost for a homeowner's insurance for, fire and floods, all that stuff was going up for stick built. Steel built was dropping significantly. And everything that just happened in California, we knew like, okay, we really have a lot of people's attention now building steel buildings.
Yeah.
Okay? A lot of insurance companies, I have probably 5 or 6 mortgage companies, big companies that have reached out to us and they want to be our preferred lender, for the sales of these units.
Right.
And I would never think those companies would reach out to us. It's only 100 units, but I see
Right.
where they're going.
Wow.
But what we did, going back to the community center, when we were going through our pro forma and looking at the cost to maintain the pool and the maintenance of it, and we would have a little tiny gym and a little, office and what have you, that the HOA or the insurance alone was $70,000 a year just for the insurance.
Wow.
Man.
Which we now have to take that and divide it up by 100 units. And when you look at the overall cost of HOAs, it was significant. It was like $380 a month per unit on average.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay that type of money. I wouldn't. So I'm
No.
like, I'm not going to build this thing with that. So what we did is we got smart. And Lifetime Fitness originally is actually a multifamily developer by trade, and then started building gyms, but they focused on primary markets. So I looked at this and I said, well, what if I separate the gym, the community center, from the residential just by parcels and switching parcels, and then open up the gym to the public and build a much larger, more desirable regular gym, like a much nicer gym, not some small community center, but like a real gym.
A legit
And when
gym.
you look at it, when you put that hat on for this area, the gyms are so underserved there, and they need it badly. And so I'm like, shoot, man, I wonder if we can get some good feedback. So we started taking some polls and reaching out. Now, mind you, I've been going out there for 35 years. I know everybody there.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, this will make more sense. So we separated the gym from the residents. Now the gym is our phase one. We're going to build the gym. The pool is actually a Club Drift, which is actually in Dubai. So the design of this pool is a Dubai inspired design pool, right?
Man.
Nice.
And then with a huge like outdoor patio with cabanas, and we can do events there, and that's just for the pool.
Yeah.
And then the gym itself is actually 3 stories. 2 stories of it, it's all obviously the best of the best equipment, Arsenal equipment, Rogue equipment, all the best you can imagine. And we're opening it up to the public and allowing people to come in and work out. But the residents, it doesn't sit on the balance sheet of the HOAs for the residents, because the income we're going to produce from the community itself is what's going to maintain that gym.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask you is, did you parcel it off and you're selling it to Lifetime or somebody, or you're keeping it? They're going to be a long-term corporate tenant.
What I was originally going to do was which is a really good move, is to basically do like a build to suit, go get like a Planet Fitness, which I don't like Planet Fitness in any way, and I'll say it publicly. But all these other companies or other bigger gyms out there that are more public, I can go and hit them up, but the area won't call for it because they just don't have the real income levels, because it is a second home location. Census Bureau doesn't provide the real income levels or the density there. It's about 4 years behind as far as collecting the right data. So now we do boots on the ground data. It's completely different. So we believe in our data by far. And we have other third parties that will provide the same data we're looking at, but it's just the Census Bureau won't. So when you're dealing with a big corporation, they won't go off anything else except for those big institutional data sources, right? So what the idea would have been is to build the gym, bring in a large tenant. They just rent the building from us. We get cash flow. We get a value increase on the building. Because remember, if the building would have stayed a part of the community of the residents, and I didn't parcel it off then that building has no value. It would have just been an amenity for the residents.
Right. Which is
But
just
the
an
minute
expense
that
at the end of the
building
day.
now generates income, it now
Wow.
has value.
Very cool.
Yeah.
But the pool is
Okay.
separate, Ryan, right? The pool
Totally
is
separate.
And the pool is just for the owners of the
The pool can use for the whole community. So the gym owners can too, or the gym
they can.
members can too.
Oh, okay.
But there's an upcrease in that, if you want to use that, whatever. But yeah, as far as the residents, they get access to that as if it's their community center for free.
The pool and the gym.
Oh yeah, the pool and the
That's
gym.
amazing.
And the gym.
Well, Ryan, what I want to know is how involved are you in planning all this stuff, right? Because you're obviously the business visionary.
Right.
But and I tend to think you probably are pretty involved. But when it comes down to the design and the construction and walking the job and figuring out what kind of gym and all these like how are you geeking out on that stuff? Like how involved are you on that part of it?
Oh, bro, it's my thing. Yeah. So here's it goes back to hiring the right people, right? So my architect is a guy by the name of Stephen Beagle. He remodeled the Pentagon, and he kind of has a private equity mindset. He's buying up all kinds of different architectural firms and engineering firms and landscape architects and so forth throughout the country. Very smart guy, very wealthy. Been in the game since the 70s. And then he gobbled up an engineering firm that actually did all the engineering for the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. So that's my design team.
Wow. Nice.
So I went and got the right people, and their interior designers have been doing equinoxes and all that stuff. So we brought all of them in and then collabed with what our vision was, and then what they want and what they thought they can do, and then value engineer or whatever. But then we went to them and said, okay, here are all of the equipment that we want. Here's kind of overall the layout that we want. Here's the weight of all of that, because remember, this is 2 stories, so they can engineer it all. And, but yeah, when ultimately answer your question, I am knee deep in all of that design. So to kind of back up a little further, I ended up bringing on a CEO. It'll be 3 years here pretty soon to deal with all the back office, capital raising, compliance, basically take over my position. So I can be more focused on development, acquisitions, business development, and this type of stuff.
Nice.
Love that.
That's my job now.
Smart.
Okay, so the CEO is more like I don't want to say the administrative or the operations side, but it's more like running, like you said, the back office type of stuff, where you can hyper focus on frankly, probably the important parts of the core business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so remember I was saying is like I'm the visionary, but like the team that really supports it is the important part. The good thing is my CEO, he opened up, he's a Wall Street guy. He raised $600 million and took an aviation company public, that type of stuff. Just he's managed billions and billions of dollars in portfolios. He was originally a compliance officer for a broker dealer. So he understands compliance, raising capital, SEC, fund management. So he sits at the table with me on all that stuff. So he's very helpful there. Because again, we speak to our attorneys constantly nonstop, especially when you have multiple funds and multiple projects and a lot of moving pieces. So I knew that the company cannot grow unless somebody takes that much weight on, but I needed someone pretty smart and sophisticated. I didn't necessarily need him to have a big real estate background, which he doesn't, but he is a compliance guy and he knows how to build and manage teams and big companies. So he is a back office. He controls that whole side now. And then remember, I also have other department heads that have been sitting at their seat for a while. As far as a controller, a very important position. And they just kind of run it. So I can keep bolting on businesses, funds, and companies, and we got all that kind of covered.
There it is.
So,
that's amazing,
so I would
man.
say right now I'm more on the visionary business development side.
Nice, which you do good at.
So as far as Pradyme, what are your guys' core businesses or core? So obviously you have the development, right? So you guys are raising capital, you're building and developing all these amazing projects, including barn caves, barndominiums that we just talked about. And then are you guys also doing private lending or other private equity investments with other sponsors or other developers, joint ventures, just loaning people debt? Unpack just some of that. So if someone's listening, they can kind of get a good feel.
So the way I cut my teeth was really the lending space. And then when I lost everything in 2008, I ended up getting in rubbing elbows with some high net worth clients that loved the mortgage-backed security instrument, but wanted to go more private. So higher interest rates, fix and flip financing, business purpose, no traditional mortgage. So I actually got into that post 2008. Longer story to that. I think we all shared it in the past, but I ended up kind of staying in the private space since 2008. And then I had opened up a fund and really started lending the private money side. And at the one time I was doing, so it's all hard money loans, bridge loans, ground up construction, commercial loans. That's kind of what my reputation was built on. And we still have that fund. That's actually kind of the financial horsepower of the company.
Nice.
Okay.
Because that is, in essence, I say humbly, it's a hamster wheel. It's the same old thing,
Yeah.
Credit box. I have a lot of, borrowers that have been flipping 20, 30 properties a year that have been working with them for 5, 6 years in a row. So I have a very consistent deal flow and client base in that world.
So these
And
guys
then
come to you. They're flipping some houses or something. You'll do the financing for them on that. So
correct.
and then that creates the loan points, the interest, basically the fee income that then you guys can use to propel some of the rest of your business. I mean, essentially,
Correct. And
it's
you
that
know
kinda,
this more than anybody. I'm also really good at the revolver side of it. So working with
Yeah.
builders and developers that have multiple phase projects
Yep.
where we can raise, we'll come in and develop, where we'll fund, maybe a 40 unit project where they're building them in 4 or 5 phases. And we'll just constantly use it. But that, the thing we like about that is that our capital is allocated to one guy with a good track record, for 2 or 3 years.
Nice.
Right. So what's nice is we can raise the capital and put the money out and we get the cash flow from the yield, but we get the points and fees and so forth.
Right.
So it's a very fruitful business, but it does keep us on the forefront. It keeps our blade sharp because we do that nationwide. And so we're seeing different contractors, different
Right.
practices, because we
Yeah.
still manage all the fund control. So
You're
we're
seeing what they're doing. You're
What
seeing
they're
what's
doing,
working,
yeah.
what's not working, who's being successful. I
Yep.
mean, I love that idea.
So
I
think
love
about
that
this.
concept, I should say,
Yeah.
Yep. So having a fund control component to our company allowed me to go and develop projects because I'm overseeing construction anyway.
Anyways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
it really
fantastic.
was seamless to then start bolting on the development side and kind of more of the equity, wealth building. So really our focus is really kind of first trust deed, hard money lending. That's kind of 50% of our business. And I'd say the other 50%. And that's pretty simple. I have very seasoned people that are running that department.
Running that, yeah.
Very not difficult at all. We're constantly raising money for that because people, a lot of boomers are just looking for cash flow. Very consistent in cash
Just
flow.
give me
We
my
make
8% or
everything.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rates go up, so do ours. We make more
Yep.
money, same stuff. And then banks are throttling back on leverage and we're going up and so
Yeah.
we typically stand out during times like this. Therefore, guys like us make more money in that department. And then consistent business because again, where else are you going to go? Right.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is what we're doing on developing and projects. So really for the most part, we're just doing first trust deed lending for hard money loans, ground up construction. And then that's nationwide. And then we'll go up to about 10 million. Most of our stuff's under 2 million. That's kind of seems to be a happy place. We do fund and sell notes. So we're very institutionalized.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we have the development side.
And the development side.
Wow. Wow.
There's so much there.
I mean,
we might have to do part 2 of this
I was going to
interview.
say, I know we're
Ryan.
getting a little time
Yeah.
thing in the back here. We're
Yeah.
going to run in a second, but Ryan, yeah, we could talk for 3 hours. We could turn this into a podcast or a Rogan podcast, I should say, a 3 hour, very easily. But
I won't use the restroom.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We might have to bring sandwiches
well,
in.
so one more thing I want to ask before we go here, right? Just kind of the big picture. What advice do you have somebody that's trying to build a company, whether it's real estate or not? They're trying to hire teams, deal with marketing, have a social media presence. They're trying to wear all these hats. If you could give them just a couple pieces of advice to keep them on the right track, what would that be?
So I would say this is something I've just recently learned. Okay. I would say that number one, know your position within the food chain in the business. And what I mean by that is there's not really much higher in the real estate realm than what you and I are doing. We're raising capital now to build projects. There's nothing harder than that.
Right.
It's just, what else are you going to do that's harder, right?
Yeah.
Unless you manage a big portfolio of it, then yeah, that's harder. But there's not much harder and there's not much farther up the food chain to go. And when people come to you and say, I want to level up from being a real estate agent or a traditional mortgage person, I want to jump into this, they need to understand that this is a step up from what they're used to. Those habits that they have need to be thrown out the window and come into this with more discipline if they really want to make something of themselves. And so ultimately this means is that you want to make sure, number one, you're hiring and bringing on the right people. And there's, I forgot the gentleman's name. It's really hard to pronounce. He's from Africa. He's a black guy. He's on social media. I really like him, kind of a round guy, bigger guy.
Huh.
But I really like what he talks about because he's a business kind of mindset developer and people, companies like me would pay him to coach.
Right.
And coach their executives. And the one thing he talks about, he goes, when you hire people, the problem is everybody has issues. Everyone's got illnesses and kids they got to pick up from school, and everyone's got it. And the thing that sucks about being an owner of a company is that we wear all the weight, and we have the same problems. And a lot of times we want to go to these people and say, "Look, I'm working 12-hour days. You have less than I have on my plate. There shouldn't be any excuse for you not to work 12-hour days. Let's be honest."
Yeah.
But there's a different type of mindset in people where What you want to hire are the people that do not care about all the hardships they have in their life. They care about a mission, and that mission is to deliver value. And by all means, no excuse, they are going to execute on the plan, period. We don't care if your laptop didn't work. We don't care if your phone got shut off. You figure out a way to deliver. And that is something that I've been very, very
fortunate.
I would say that was my Achilles heel. I had too much of a heart. I gave too many people too many chances. And, oh, you're going through hardship and I'll just give you more chances. Oh, you got to move now. And I'm paying people that aren't even really working.
Now you cut that shit right off or what?
I'm like Dogeing my own company right now.
Elon Musk, baby.
All these people working from home and getting paid for no reason. Get out of here.
No shit, right?
Cut the fat.
So I would say that's
it.
number one.
Okay.
Number two is make sure that you have a mission, and that mission, by all means, like you're on that mission. Don't try not to steer away from it, because we're deal junkies. We see another deal, we're like, hey, maybe we'll go over here. You know, just pick one lane, go oil hard on that.
Hyper focus.
Very good. Yeah.
Even if it's the hard way, it's the right way.
Yeah.
And just know it, dude. And look at it like you look at me and be like, I wonder how many sleepless nights he dealt with. How much anxiety has he dealt with? How many issues did he have with his marriage because he was so focused on this? And how much did he sacrifice not going to his kids' baseball games and everything? Like, that's all the real conversations. So the struggle is when you're in that moment. The struggle is when you know you should be a better father, better husband, but you can't because you have this mission.
Yeah.
And you made commitments and you got to follow through. And no matter what the problem is with your marriage, you're like, I can't hurt other people because we can't figure this out, honey. We're going to put this aside for a second. Like, those are the real conversations that people don't have.
Right.
And just know that we're all doing the same thing.
Same thing.
Everyone's sacrificing that type of stuff. And the best part is when you have people around you that are all sacrificing together, it's worth it, because here's what happens. Your spouses, they're sacrificing time with their kids.
Yeah.
And then even the spouses, they all see everyone's doing the same thing. And it doesn't make you feel so isolated on your own island with so much pain.
Because now you're all going through it together.
Yeah. Great advice.
But you need to
great
drill,
insight.
dig, and it's all about who you spend your time with, dude, and who you have close to you, period.
The right team around you.
Don't trust people until they can't be trusted. Don't let people into your finances, and make sure that you have people that have integrity and want to deliver on the mission and are willing to, they care more about you and the relationship you have than the money, which is hard.
Wow. Legend, Ryan, legend.
You guys heard it right here, man. Dropping the bombs, bro. I'm telling you, we could have kept going. We'll definitely have to do a part two.
Come on board because you're chasing money. You haven't figured out life yet, dude.
Exactly.
You're so far behind. It's about relationships. That's why they say family, God, family, money. Like, there's a reason that exists. If you're not focusing on the relationship and you're just chasing money, you've already lost. You're going to keep going down that road forever and ever and ever. You're going to come over here, you're going to hurt more people, you're going to play the poor me game, and you're going to go over to another company and do the same shit. You know, I watch it all the time.
All the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Great.
Well, listen, man, my hat's off to you. You've accomplished so much. You've definitely been an inspiration to me. I've watched you over the years. I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your stories. And shit, man, I'm amped up. I'm ready to go out there.
I'm inspired, Ryan.
Yeah, let's go make some shit happen.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I want to do a mastermind where we all pull together and just put all of our problems on the table and be like, oh, dude.
Yeah,
and just
we should. We'd have a lot to talk about.
Man, how do we get through this? You know?
Yeah. Well, hey, and you know what? One of these days, we're going to get out to Havasu. And I know Greg's gone out there a few times.
I've seen the property, the warehouses, Ryan. They're beautiful.
I want to get out there, check it out, see what you got going on. Maybe even when you do have an event going on or something, or next grand opening, or I don't know, something.
We are doing a groundbreaking event the weekend of Desert Storm. It's April 24th. I think we're doing the street party.
Okay.
So we have like an easy up and down street party. And then the 26th is the groundbreaking event. And then we have a lot of people coming too.
Great. And is that open to the public? I mean, it's just anybody that wants to come?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's our entire, so the street party's in like downtown Old Town. So there's last year was like 275,000 people went through.
Oh, geez.
Just walked up and shut down the whole thing. And then our groundbreaking event will probably have close to maybe 100 people there, and then we're going to go back over to the man caves, the Paradigm Store, because you're just walking over to
we've got to go.
I'd love the invite. If we can make it happen, we would love to be there, man.
April
That'd be great.
25th, I think, or 26th.
So, the 24th is the street party, but the 26th is the groundbreaking. So if you can come in for the Saturday, I think we're starting it at 10 o'clock, so not too early.
We're going to be there.
Listen, the
Don't wanna be
26th, the
there.
26th happens to be my birthday.
wanna
And I was
shake
just, I was
Ryan's
just
hand.
telling the missus last night. I'm like, we should go out of town for my birthday. Maybe we'll go to Havasu. There we go.
I'll
Let's
give you.
go.
I'll
Hey,
call
we'll
in
do,
an excuse.
We'll do a podcast in my podcast too, because my podcast is inside that unit.
Let's
So
do
we
it.
a whole podcast there.
I want to
Dude,
see this.
You're fucking on, bro. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Let's do
thank
that.
you, Ryan.
Hey, you're the
All right,
man.
guys.
Thank you for dropping some bombs. And man, we'll talk here soon, bro.
Appreciate Ryan.
All right, love you guys. I'm rooting
Love
for
you
you.
too.
Let's rock.
Right back at you. Let's do it. Thanks,
Later,
bro.
guys.
Late.